I just started thinking about how can I create the event? Why was I waiting for somebody else to create it? I think so many people do this. They're kind of like waiting for somebody else to do something. Why couldn't I do that? Like, why couldn't I become the leader?
Subtle skills, big results.
Welcome to the Ninja Selling Podcast.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Ninja Selling Podcast. It's Rob Nelson, and today's episode is a little bit different because I had the opportunity to sit down with Greg Roeder from Liv Sotheby's International Realty here in Fort Collins, Colorado. And before we officially started recording, we were doing the thing that podcast hosts and guests typically do. We're mapping out the conversation, talking a little bit about what might be valuable for you as the listener and the direction we wanted to go and the steps we would take along the way. But as we were talking, Greg started sharing insight after insight. He began describing how he built his business in such great detail by taking the foundational principles of Ninja and weaving them into the things that he's most passionate about. And the more that we talked, the more that I realized if we stopped and tried to recreate this conversation, we'd probably lose something special. So instead of saying, hey, let's just pause and start the show, I simply hit the record button. So what you're going to hear is essentially the beginning of our conversation exactly as it happened. And one of the reasons I was so excited to share Greg's story is because it represents what I would call next level Ninja. Because many people discover Ninja when they're looking for consistency and they're looking for systems, habits, and a better way to build relationships. But once those are established, the question becomes, how do I create even more live flow? Or how do I do this more authentically? Or how do I make the conversations more meaningful? Greg's answer is fascinating. Rather than simply looking for opportunities to talk with people, he digs into the things that genuinely light him up. And he finds other people who share those passions. He connects with them. He connects them with others. And then he creates what he calls signature events. These are experiences that bring people together around those shared interests. And the result isn't just more business. It's stronger relationships. It's a community. And it's clients that know one another. So the referrals happen naturally, and it's a business that has grown dramatically because the focus is on creating value and connection rather than just looking for the next prospect. So whether you're still building a Ninja foundation or you're looking for ideas to take your business to the next level, I think you're going to find something very valuable in this conversation. So rather than starting at the beginning, we're going to drop you in right at the moment when I hit the record button. Here's my conversation with Greg Roeder.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
So 3 years ago, I'm running, like just like you. I know you're running around like crazy. I'm going around from thing to thing. I'm leaving Jimmy John's. I just got done eating a sandwich. My phone rings. This guy, David, I didn't even get his last name, just David, wants me to come and give a value assessment for his house. It was nearby, so pull up to the house, meet him at the door. Immediately, I sense energy's a little strange. Something's off. This is a big person. This is like late spring, pretty cool outside. He's sweating profusely. Just kind of a blank stare in his eye. Kind of is an interesting handshake. But I come in. He says, "Hey, let me show you around." And usually that starts the front of the house, right? He starts bolting right for the back of the house. So I start following him. And as I'm following him, I'm noticing all the blinds are drawn in the house. It's dark in there. It's also hot in there. I then see his elbow kind of pinned against his side, and I see the point of something white coming out the back. And I'm starting to think, like, I don't know who this is. I just answered. I ran over here. I don't know a last name. I don't know anything. And there's something he's pinning right next to his side. And so I'm focused on what is under his arm as my heart rate's starting to go up. As I'm focusing on that, he does a very short pivot and points at a new fixture and tile that were installed in a hallway bathroom. I go right by him. He stopped so suddenly that my momentum carried me right by him. And at that moment, I realized there was no way out of the house. And me, big person in between me and any exit point, and my heart rate starts going up. And this is where I'm really started. I can't even hear what he's saying. And I am just at 100 anxiety, just climbing. And then like, bam, I hear this bang, and it's on the other side of the wall. Slow motion, I see him pull this thing out from under his arm, and it's a stuffed animal. It's a white unicorn. I hear a child laughing, running around the corner, comes over to greet him. His daughter was in the hospital and receiving just serious diagnosis. He is a guy about our age who is not sleeping, not getting any sleep. And, he's blinds drawn because he's trying to catch up on sleep during the day. He knew his daughter was coming home. He had that for her, and, they hug, and it's just like this moment. And so we talk a little bit more. And before I leave, I can tell he's just not in a good place. Like any of us would not be in a good place. I say, hey, would you like to come to play pickleball with my friends and I later today? We're actually playing at 4:00 today. And he says, it wouldn't be any good. I'm horrible. And I said, we could use more horrible players. Just come. So later that day, he doesn't come. So I send him a text. I say, hey, you're missing out. And then the next week, I was hoping he'd show up. I sent him another text. The third week he shows up. He's gripping the paddle, like white knuckling. He's nervous to be there. And watching him out there the first 40 minutes, he is terrible. He's not great. He's not comfortable. But then something happens. Somebody in our group attempts this backwards running move underneath the legs, a move that they probably hadn't attempted since middle school. And they should not have attempted it as a 45-year-old man, and just ends up sprawled out, not seriously injured, thank goodness, but hilarious to watch.
Flopping out
just
there.
Flopping, hilarious fail. And that's when I heard it. His laugh is just like ripples across the courts, across the tennis courts, it just laughs. And then the rest of the time he's loose, he's having fun, he's getting to know the other guys. I walk up to him after we're done and I hand him a beer and I say, how was it? And he says this in kind of a quiet, serious voice. He's like, that's the first time I've laughed in 6 months.
That's awesome.
First time I've laughed in 6 months. And I said, I know. And so we talked and he got to know some of the other guys and he's out there playing. What I learned in that moment is that I could be more than somebody who just lists and sell houses. I could be more. We can all be more. Everybody listening to this can be more. We can do prospecting in a different way. I started really leaning into my pickleball league, my version of strategic gatherings. I started really leaning into my signature events, getting people together so I could meet the spouses, the kids, the families, get them introduced to my clients, my friends. And that's when it turned. That was the turning point. 3 years ago, 12-ish million volume. And then the following year in 2024, 25 million in volume. And then in 2025, 40 million in volume.
Across a big threshold.
Across the threshold. There's more that, then kind of filling in with the, okay, now you have all of this going, your 50 becomes inevitable. And by the way, if you're doing this, it is going to be more than 50 live interviews that are going to become inevitable.
We're going to break this
changer.
down.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the biggest challenges in real estate is that prospecting feels like work.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, we're told that as a salesperson, our job is to prospect. There's two sides of this business. There's business generation. There's doing the business. Both of them fit in the work category. And we hear this advice like you've got to sit down and make the calls, or you've got to be talking to enough people, or you've got to strike up conversations. And Ninja starts at the point of this doesn't have to be with strangers. It doesn't have to be cold calling, but there's a whole next level that you've discovered in prospecting, or as we call it, flow. But you have created an environment based around the things that you love, what lights you up, and you've attracted people to you because of that. Mm-hmm. And what I really want to start with is, what was your business like when you were in the stage of struggling to generate business consistently? You were earning a great living, but you weren't having all that much fun.
Right.
What were you doing that led to those being the outcomes?
I was just trying to do what everybody else was doing, but do more of it. I thought, if I can caffeinate more, work longer hours, then that's what's going to get me there. Driven by fear, driven by, just not having the abundance mentality. That's what I was doing. It's just kind of playing it safe. Playing it safe. I'll show up to the random fundraising breakfast that somebody invited me to because I'm going to meet, quote, people. I'll strike up a conversation with quote, people at a soccer game, a kid's sports game. I just wasn't yet understanding, because you just nailed it. There's nuance here in these 50 live interviews. It's not just people. Like, you need to find your people. I think stop trying to serve everyone. Really decide, who are your people? Who are you targeting? Who are your ideal clients? Like, really decide that. And then that's if you can make your 50, those every week. I mean, that's what helped me.
So you're showing up to that breakfast.
Yeah.
What about that felt difficult or unnatural to you?
I don't know that it felt either difficult or unnatural. I think that it just felt like, everyone was kind of there doing the same thing.
Slightly inauthentic?
Yeah, slightly inauthentic. It's like if you show up to a party where you don't really maybe have any common thread with anybody, at least that you're aware of. Like, I don't know, you might love pickleball, you might love hiking, you might love whatever, and somebody else in the room might too, but you're not aware of these common threads. You don't have this common thing pulling you together. People need to, I think, vet out those common things and try to seek out people who are, in their tribe.
Was there a moment where you realized there had to be a better way? Even as a ninja, because you were a ninja at the point that you were going to these breakfasts and having these maybe questionably authentic conversations with people.
Yeah.
Was there a moment where you said, I got to do this differently?
Yeah, there was a moment. Just a quick story. My best friend growing up was, I'm in a unique situation where my best friend growing up is also my mentor. And he got diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. And so I've been spending a lot of time with him back in Iowa, and that brings up so many memories. One of the memories was my first sales job selling Cutco knives. My parents had set me up with one of their friends who owned a big door factory, this amazing high dollar per hour job, in a factory. And I said, no, I'm going to sell Cutco knives.
All right.
On a commission only. A few weeks into that, I'm at my friend Jack's at his sister's graduation party. Graduation parties are a big thing in Iowa, and over 100 people there, and I'm just kind of in the back of the garage nursing my lemonade, hoping nobody asks me about how my summer job's going. And Jack asks me, and I contemplated even lying to my friend, but I couldn't. I said 0 knives. I've sold 0 knives. It's going horribly. 10 minutes later, he has some tables pushed together, and he basically forces me to get up in front of this big group and give a Cutco knife sales presentation to, by the way, no one asked his sister. It was her party. No one asked her. We just pushed these tables together, and next thing you know, I'm pitching Cutco knives to 100+ people pouring out of this driveway in this garage. In 1 hour, I end up selling close to $4,000 worth of knives. And that was like a quarter of a century ago. And what I remembered from that, when that memory came to the surface, was who was I selling to? I was selling to my tribe. I was selling to my community. I was selling to people that watched me play sports, that knew who I was. People that were rooting for me, that wanted me to succeed. People that, if they didn't know me very well, they definitely knew my parents, or they knew my sister. And we're from a small town in Iowa. Everyone, there's connections. That was my community. That was my tribe. That's who I was selling to. They wanted to see me succeed. They wanted to help me. So the orders just came flowing in. And I'm sitting having a beer with Jack after that event. And he's like, man, why have you been, because he was asking, why hadn't you sold any knives up to this point? I said, well, my plan was, crack open a Red Bull and dial random numbers out of the phone book. And that's what I was doing. And I was calling strangers. I think when you show up to many of these events, whether it's a Chamber of Commerce event or random fundraising, you're surrounded by people that are kind of strangers, and you don't need that many people, in your tribe. So focusing that moment in the garage, a quarter of a century ago, having that success, that memory floating back to the surface because of what my friend is dealing with right now and spending all the time with him, that's kind of that was a really big mind shift.
Very interesting story. Also, it feels like the moment maybe where you caught the sales bug, where you saw this as a potential career or a path for your life. And it sounds like there was a period of time where you were running a sales business based upon what you thought you needed to do or what people told you that you needed to do.
Yeah.
And you also had these genuine interests outside of real estate.
Right.
So what were you interested in outside of real estate?
I started, pickleball has been a pretty long time passion, working out, getting in some of these adventure races like the Tough Mudder back in the day, more recently the DECA, the Spartan races, just anything health and wellness, live music up at the Mish. So anything health and wellness work, I'm kind of connected with my community. And then live music were really the things.
So how did you start seeing those things could connect your real estate business and your outside passions?
I just started thinking about, how can I create the event? Why was I waiting for somebody else to create it? I think so many people do this. They're kind of like waiting for somebody else to do something. Why couldn't I do that? Like, why couldn't I become the leader? I got on the Band app, and that just makes coordinating the weekly get-togethers incredibly easy. Paperless post. It makes the signature events, people are RSVPing for those easy. And then I have help with the details because the details are kind of the same every time getting it set up now. There are little things that we throw in, like spend time the day before studying the RSVP list so I can make strategic connections. I'm remembering faces. I'm remembering names. I want to know what the spouse's name is. I want to know what the kids' names are. I'm reviewing my notes. Are they in basketball, baseball, lacrosse, dance? So I want to have all of that top of mind. I'm really studying my RSVP list before, and then I'm also drawing lines on my RSVP list, like who needs to meet who. Like they like hiking, they just hiked a 14er, they should meet this person who's new to town who would probably love to hike a 14er but doesn't even know where the 14ers are. So you start drawing those lines, making those connections. And then the day of the event, writing the little things like, hey, name tags. Like, I'm going to write the names in the name tags. I'm going to give that to them. It gets rid of all of the anxiety from not remembering the person's name who you just met. Everybody has a name tag on. Also, there's something about showing up to a party. I think it's that first minute because there's a little bit of anxiety, right? Is there someone I know here? Is this going to be fun? Is this going to be, that first minute is really important. So greeting them myself, having help with the greeting too. If there's a lot of people coming at once, they need to be greeted. They need to feel extremely welcome. They need to get their name tag. They know that you know their name. They've got their name tag, like all these little things.
This is a huge transition of, I was running my real estate business and exploring things about town where I might bump into somebody versus creating the opportunities yourselves for people to gather.
Yeah.
And for you to be the nucleus or the hub of a series of different interconnected relationships, right, where very little of this actually has to do with real estate. Mm-hmm. This has to do with the things that light you up outside of your real estate business. Right. But inevitably, it all comes back to you being a real estate professional.
You want it to. And that was a mistake that I made early on when I was doing this. There was a moment when I realized I was making that mistake. I had organized a pickleball tournament, and afterwards there was beer at a local brewery. Everyone's having a great time. I put so much time into this tournament, and I had done other ones too. And people were invited. So many people were invited, and we're sitting at these long tables, and someone had a real estate question, and they shouted across the table to somebody else who was also in real estate. Because I have other real estate people, and they're my friends in the community. And I just thought it was interesting that I didn't get out. And I found out later that person didn't even know that I sold real estate. So that was a mistake. So that's when I really brought in this next kind of, which I just call making content for my dream clients. Yeah. And I really started putting together a newsletter that's different, not, the worst thing is not having any kind of a newsletter, I think. But even if you have a newsletter, if it's the same as everybody else's newsletter, I think that's like showing up to a party wearing the same outfit as everybody else and then wondering why nobody remembers you afterwards. Mm-hmm. So a unique newsletter, one that stands out. You really have to have a niche. Like, what's your niche? My niche is Fort Collins properties over $1 million. That's my niche. So I have special data in my newsletter, from average number of showings per month to average days until closing, all of these things that are indicators that help people make a real estate decision within my specific niche. That's in my newsletter. Intel that they aren't going to get anywhere else. If you take people out to lunch and do these things, whether it's a commercial real estate broker or a developer or someone who works at the city, they're going to give you intel that you're not going to read in the paper. And it's going to cost you like $15 because you're going to buy their lunch, you're going to spend $15, and you're going to get great intel, and that's going to go in your newsletter. And then bring the relationships from the newsletter, from your readers, into the real world. There's a great broker in Miami who focuses on condos in Miami. Mm-hmm. Peter Zilwicki, if I'm saying his name right, but he sells many, many millions of dollars worth of condos every year. He has the condo investor report. He just focuses on that condo report, and he takes his readers out of the newsletter into real life. He does a bus tour around to the different projects. So he does a great job of that. I've had really good luck just taking my readers out, inviting them to my signature events, inviting them to little special kind of one-offs like coffee tastings in town so they can meet me in person. They're not just a reader. They appreciate the information. I get really good feedback on it, but I want to meet them in real life. Yeah. And so that occupying that real estate portion of their brain then became this thing that happened that paired with everything else.
You're taking that same level of authenticity that you put into your signature events, which we'll call the drivers of live flow for you, because they're catalysts for follow-up opportunities. The people that were able to attend, you get to see how it went. Those that weren't able to attend, you get to check in on them and let them know what they missed. But also you've taken this and put it in your auto flow, to use the ninja term.
Absolutely.
And your auto flow is just as authentic. You're not using canned stories. You're not repurposing news that was already put out there, but you're focused on who your client is. And I think we should talk a little bit about the results and share any numbers that feel relevant to you, and any that don't, I'm totally fine with you not sharing. But in the process of doing this, how long did it take you to get from doing what everybody else was doing to really creating your niche and more owning that niche?
Yeah. It took me a year to put it in place. It took me about 2 years to perfect it.
Yeah.
And then it took me 3 years to go from like 12 million to 40 million.
Yeah. So that's a short amount of time to almost quadruple your business in that period of time. One of the things, you deserve a lot of accolades. One of them, I believe, is you hold the record for the highest closed price on a single-family residence in Fort Collins.
I do. I hold the highest closed price within the city limits of Fort Collins, also the highest sale price per square foot, penthouse at Cortina, 1,000 a square foot. And look, I want to take a moment, if I can, here to say, because I appreciate that I got started in this business 20 years ago, and I moved to Fort Collins. I'm living in my sister's basement. I had nothing. I probably lived there for far too long. I finally, back then, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. So I got a loan, got a little townhome. I couldn't really afford it, so I was commuting back and forth, working nights at Home Depot in Loveland, stocking shelves just to continue going this. And then I discovered Ninja. So I was like, if I hadn't discovered Ninja back then, I don't know, I might still be selling clothes washers and clothes dryers at a Loveland Home Depot. I don't know, but I would give a lot. I have to give so much credit, because I am decently intelligent, but this Ninja 9, going to the installations, multiple installations, like everyone listening knows this, you can't just go to one installation. You can't. You have to do that at least every few years. That's what provided the structure for all of these things.
Yeah. What role have signature events in creating this ecosystem where you're connected with people in ways that are far beyond real estate, and you're using your passions and the authenticity of those passions to create inroads for people who might experience real estate change? What role have referrals played, both in the business side and people bringing people to you because you're great at pickleball or you're passionate about pickleball, and they have a friend that plays pickleball? This has nothing to do with real estate, but it creates a connection that might lead to something.
Yeah, it really starts with a connection outside of real estate. You have to have that, you have to occupy that real estate portion of their brain. You have to really be the person they think of. So that's where that content comes into place. Putting some content out there online, like just going out, look, and I think when people hear that, a lot of time they tense up. Like, that's not me. I don't want to do that. And I understand completely. I think there are two types of content that we should discuss really quickly. One is content for the crowd. That's what I would call doing a little dance to the most recent trending song. If you're a good dancer, if you like doing that, if that's you, great, go for it. You're going to get a lot of views. I just don't know that you're going to get a lot of clients from that. Probably a lot of followers, probably a lot of views, but what I believe in and what's worked for me, I've seen it work amazingly well for others too, is creating content for your audience. Who is your dream client? Define your audience. Make helpful content that will help them make a real estate decision, a specific real estate decision in a specific market, the market that you serve. For me, it's $1 million plus buyers and sellers in Fort Collins. What's it for you? Make content that will help the person who wants to do that and put that out there. And why does that, in tandem with the newsletter and everything, it creates this momentum. And there's a narrative out there right now that I think, because the most recent stats is, the National Association of Realtors came out with these statistics. The average age of a home seller this past year, 64 years old. The average age of a repeat home buyer, which is anybody who's not a first-time home buyer, 62 years old. So a lot of the kind of thought leaders in our industry have had the narrative, well, see, these people aren't online. They aren't on social media. And I don't disagree with them, but they are missing a huge thing. And that is that these 62, 64, and older people, they have research departments. Their research departments are their adult children. And guess where their adult children are going to find you? You need to have an online presence, and you need to show up the right way and to attract those dream clients. So I just think that's an important point to make, because I don't want people to make the same mistake I did. I'm getting all these dream clients together, we're having so much fun, but I wasn't doing the things to establish myself and to occupy that real estate portion in their brain, for my dream client. So that was a huge part of this.
We talked about nuance and the nuance of Ninja. There is Ninja is a system, and there are boxes that you can tick for had a forward conversation, learned something, made a follow-up.
Yep.
But nuance comes when you go from hosting events to get business to creating value for people and becoming central to a community, or in this case, a niche community within ours. Was there a mindset shift that took place there for you where you realized signature events were not about business generation?
Right.
They were about connection?
Yeah, I think this is an important point to make. I'm glad you asked the question, because I have a rule. At all the strategic gatherings, at all the signature events, I don't talk about real estate, ever, unless I'm asked. I'm not bringing it up, ever. There's no advertising for a lender, for a title company. You're not going to see my logo. You're just not going to see any of that. The goal at these events is to connect with people and to create collisions. And what I mean about collisions, it's former clients colliding, meeting with people who are new to town, with people who might be, in my pickleball league, who might have shown up to the last signature event because they were a friend of a friend who was there at the sauna cold plunge. Like all these people in the ecosystem, collisions, getting to know each other. And I am the common denominator, the thing they all have in common. And doing my best to connect those people while I'm there. Studying the RSVP list before is a really big step. That's where the referrals come from, because I think people appreciate you putting this on. You occupy the real estate portion of the brain. You're creating all these collisions, and then those spin off. It's amazing the ripple effect that happens 2 years after an event. Somebody formed a relationship with somebody. They're hiking buddies now, or they started playing pickleball, or a couple of the wives meet up. And this is actually a real example. They're in a book club together, like the wives of guys that are in the pickleball league. So all of these people now, I have the trust transfer, right? The trust transfer goes to all these people, and then the referrals just come in. Now, do they do a little bit of recon first sometimes and check out social media content? That's why you have to keep that auto flow out there. Take the auto flow seriously. And there are ways you can put auto flow on auto, as you all teach so well. I just think if everyone can also take an extra step and make sure you're not wearing the same outfit as everybody else at the party. If you're giving them the median sale price for the past month in Larimer County, I'm just not sure how that's going to help them make a specific real estate decision. If you are looking for any person, maybe they'll call you. If you are looking for a specific dream client, you need to go deeper. You need to have some more interesting statistics, and you can find those in your local MLS.
What I heard you say is the measure of success for a signature event is a year later when you walk into a restaurant with your family and see two people who didn't know each other sitting there sharing a drink.
Yeah.
That they created a connection over some common piece of their life, but that trust transfer that you talked about, it's inevitable. That when the conversation of changing their lives or real estate, people love to talk about real estate. Yeah. Your name's going to come up because they're both connected to you.
Right. And there's that ripple effect.
Yes.
That you can multiply that impact too. We take some just fun video of our events. You might have seen those online of people enjoying themselves, doing a sauna, doing a cold plunge, our 4th of July party, paddle battles, our pickleball thing. And I got a call on Friday from somebody in Asheville, North Carolina, who just saw one of those videos online on one of our social media channels. That guided him to my newsletter, which he's been a subscriber to for 7 months now. And he called me. He and his wife are in town this week. We're meeting for this Friday morning for coffee, and then we're going to go tour places. They're looking for up to 1.5 million. So the way this works is just that, just reiterating, if I can do this, you can too. And I love this conversation because Ninja has changed my life. I like these conversations about how do we ninja?
Yeah.
How do we ninja?
And
Yeah.
the whole system was based upon the evolution, the relevance, because Larry was observing people.
Mm-hmm.
And things that were part of Ninja 20 years ago don't exist today. And there are things that exist today that weren't there 20 years ago.
Right.
If there's a recipe for a signature event here, it's start with what excites you.
Yep.
Make connections with people who share that interest or introduce that interest to people.
Right.
And then just create a small gathering.
Right.
It doesn't have to be perfect, but you got to start somewhere. And if your focus is on serving rather than selling, just get the people together, share that common passion that you have, or introduce your passion to people.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly you're going to have some connections.
And get help with the things that aren't, we all kind of look at our pie time and we try to be as efficient as we can be. Get help with the setup. I have my CSU connection. I'm teaching there, and there are a lot of students that want to make a few bucks that are eager around for the summer, so they come volunteer. We got to get the drinks in the coolers. We got to have them at the right place. We got to have the paddleboard set up by the lake, from the RSVP system to everything. Like, these are things that are not hard to set up. It does take time. It doesn't have to be your time. Get help. That is the other thing, because you need to be focused on connecting with people, focused on bringing your high positive energy to these things, whether it's your strategic gatherings, whatever you're doing. And those are, just to be clear, like strategic gatherings for me, those are consistent. Those are like, they might just be for a season, but they're consistent. They're repeatable. The signature events are these larger things that you might be doing anywhere from 2, 4, 5 times a year. So you just have to make sure in all of these instances, you are showing up in that high positive state. And it takes some hours and you can get some help so you can put the time into taking care of yourself and show up focused on those connections, and then making those connections while you're in a high positive state.
Any recipe that gets documented in a recipe book. Yeah. You have written a book about this that you're working on right now and will be published. Tell us about that process of taking what you've done and putting it into a system for others. Mm-hmm. And what can we expect inside this book, and when can we get it?
The book is called Getting to a Million. Become a leader in your community and build a 7-figure real estate practice. And it really focuses on a lot of the things we've talked about during this podcast, but really the 3 M's. Mobilize your people. That's the first one. Mobilize your people. We've talked about that. The second one is make content for your dream clients. And then the third one is multiply your impact. And in the book, we go into the recipe, exactly how I've done it and how I've helped other people do it, even within this community. I just talked to someone yesterday morning. She's doing her Friday fun day where she gets her friends, her clients, and her hopefully future clients together every single Friday, and they do a different adventure, just the girls. This is something that works. So I focus on these 3 M's in the book. I go into detail. I tell people exactly how to do this. If you want to get this book, you can get on a waiting list for it. It's coming out in a few months. gettingtoamillion.com. Everyone that signs up to be on the waiting list is also going to get a free workbook that accompanies it that will help you work through it and come up with your own plan. We're all different. For me, it's pickleball. For you, it might be hiking or chess or happy hour. For me, it's a sauna and cold plunge party. For Eileen, someone I've been in touch with in the Las Vegas area, she does these really, really cool gardening parties where she brings in this like celebrity gardener to show people how to grow things in the desert. There's other examples of how other agents are applying these things. And these are ninjas too, by the way, in the book, applying these things to what they're already doing and getting really great results. So yeah, gettingtoamillion.com. Get on the waiting list for the book. It'll be out in a few months. And again, everyone that signs up to be on that waiting list will get a free workbook to accompany the book.
Connecting with you other places. What are your socials? How do you sign up for your newsletter? Agents love to see what other agents are doing, and your stuff is so good that people deserve to see it.
Thank you, Rob. Connect with me on LinkedIn. My name, first name's Greg, and last name is Roeder. If you just search me, I will come up. Selling Fort Collins. You'll see my logo on LinkedIn there too. But definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with you all there. On Instagram, you'll find me at Selling Fort Collins. You'll see little clips from my newsletter. You'll be directed to the newsletter if you get connected with me on LinkedIn or on Instagram.
And if you happen to be coming to Fort Collins and you play pickleball or are curious about pickleball, you don't even have to be good. You don't even have to have a paddle, but Greg will play with you.
I've got like 100 extra paddles, so just hit me up. I would love to connect.
Greg, thank you for your time today. This is inevitably going to be one of those podcasts that's to be continued. You're doing so many cool things, and the results speak for themselves, and you're doing it with that nuance that creates the next level of ninja that we've been talking about. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to doing this again soon.
If you enjoyed this episode, visit us at theninjasellingpodcast.com to learn more about ninja selling classes and coaching to get you started or further your journey on the ninja path.
Thank you for joining us. Now go have an incredible day.